Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very glad to be here. Sorry, I don't speak Slovak. It's not that great, my Slovak language skills, so we have to go about it in English. So my name is Helio MOREIRA. I'm head of sorting, so I'm responsible for the operations of textile house sorting and recycling. And I'm also part of the management board of the Circular Textiles Association in Slovakia, called ZOPROT. Our goal here is to give you an overview of the whole textile management system at the example of our expertise, how we handle it, and with a target that at the end of it, you can have an overview and some key outputs from it, how we operate the whole supply chain of textiles, especially from the post-consumer stream. It will be very quick, really quick, because we only have 15 minutes, so bear with me, and if you have questions, we'll try to follow up on them later at the end of the presentation. So to start with, I'm not going to go through all the details that you see on the screen, but we have been working here in Slovakia since 1996, but we're present in 11 European countries. We're now processing in one shift more than 385,000 pieces, and we achieve a very high reuse rate of about 75% of the textile waste stream. We have a chain of 175 shops in Europe, and we, as of last year, have been appreciated by approximately 80 million individual clients. As I mentioned, as being part of the board, we are founding members of ZOPROT, and we also represent Slovakia with a textile stream within ERIC, the European Confederation. And it's also important to note that we cooperate with the two existing textile EPRs in Europe, which is the French EPR, Refashion, and also the Dutch EPR through the QA certification. And we're also certified by the Global Recycle Standard. It will be important so that you understand after what we're speaking about. So the goal, as I said, too loud, sorry. The goal with this is basically to have a full spectrum of the post-consumer textile management, and especially how the sort-to-reuse operates, which is our expertise. You have sort-to-reuse, sort-to-recycle, sort-to-energy. There are different types of sorting strategies and business models. We are experts on sort-to-reuse first. So the main goal of our company is to retain reuse value from sorting the clothes and then commercializing them through retail and wholesale, but also to be ready for downstreaming or preparing the material to be recycled and used by the producers, by the brands thereafter. So by the end of this short presentation, I hope that you can understand what we mean by this little GIF. So the whole process of the textile management system. It all starts with a collection of textiles. It's quite important to note that it's key to spread awareness between the communities, between societies, and also private entities which are taking part of the collection, along with municipalities, that the material is treated as a resource, not as waste. There have been some events in Europe where the material is treated as a waste stream, collected in cranes with waste trucks, and that does not end well, because the material has to be preconditioned properly so that when it reaches us, a sorting center, we are able to retrieve reuse value from it, and if not reuse, recycling material, or even if not recycling, it's able then to be turned into a downcycling product. Otherwise, the only hope for those textiles is eventually to become energy recovery or solid recovery fuel. So that is very important. We always emphasize that. You cannot treat textiles collected as waste. One way that we do that at Textile House, and is important in our whole industry in Europe, is that we need to have a strong synergy with the textile collectors. So we always keep close cooperation with them, so that with every truck that we receive, every delivery part, we give them back a full overview of what has become of it, so they can trace back to the source and, for example, understand that a specific city has not reached the proper awareness within the population that those goods are meant for reuse. So they're either too wet or they're sorted wrongly. So that's very important to have that cooperation with the municipalities or with the private sector, with the collectors, so they actually understand better the source and how it's being handled. One thing which is also very important in our textile management stream, we do a lot of things so that you prevent waste from being created. And one of the major things is that we're also developing to being a laundry company for wet washing, dry washing, chemical cleaning, because we can recover a lot of material by doing so. It's also important to note, because we often have that question, that even within the new clothing that you purchase, is advised that you should wash them before. So it's not to expect that the second-hand clothing should be wet washed or dried before you use them. When you purchase, first you have to take care of it as a client yourselves, the same as you would do with a new piece of clothes. We often emphasize that because even though it makes a lot of sense to wash it, because we just use 1.8 liter of water to wash a t-shirt, but it still takes 2,700 liters of water to produce just one cotton t-shirt. So it means that you can basically wash 1,500 t-shirts with the water usage of producing a single t-shirt. So I think we can all reason with those numbers. It makes a lot of sense. But on the other hand, I also have to point out that even though we are washing 1.2 tons of clothes every day, we can't wash everything. So it will require us to have 283 machines to take care of our whole production in a shift. It will be about 6,000 square meters of machines side by side. It's just to give an impression to you that there's no laundry capacity this big. You won't find it. We do our best, but it's not realistic that everything should be wet washed before the client uses it. After the waste prevention practices, the tracing to the source to inform our partners, the collectors, and after avoiding it to become waste by drying, washing when needed, it starts the process of sorting. So sort to reuse, which is our expertise, it happens only so throughout a very detailed training of the sorters, first to sense the material by hand, by touch only, because more often than not, you see that it's lacking a label, or you don't have time for it, because it's an industrial process whatsoever. We also have a dedicated team to constantly train the sorters to understand fashion and market awareness, because sort to reuse also has to attain, in the end, a value that the client is willing to buy for. We have, in the end, the same market niche as the retailers whatsoever of new clothes. And lastly, we work a lot with innovation as well within sort to reuse, because you have to facilitate for the sorter so that they can have better assessment of the piece, both of the value, the shape, and the condition of it, if it's reuse, recycling, or if it cannot be recovered. One thing that is very key in our niche as well is that we need to focus a lot on reporting and traceability of information. So we have started, we're the only company having RFID system in the bags within Europe, and that is to support the EPR regulation and traceability within the sector. So we can trace every product, every batch, who produced, when it was done, and also where it was shipped, and throughout even a digital and permanent inventory of it. It's also important with the stakeholders and with the EPR institutions that everything that is shipped out can be then followed up where it ends. And it can also be traced back who produced it. So that has a very high implication within the framework of EPR. So we have developed some systems that you can trace back the production of every single batch back to the source. To give an overview about reuse, from the 75% reuse that we achieve, you may wonder, where does it go? Because that's a recurrent question. So basically 40% of the reuse we sell in Europe, most of it in our own shops. 30% we sell it in Africa, and here we speak about reuse, not recycling. And 30% in other locations in Asia and Central America. It's a global market, and it has to be like this because of seasonality, quality level, and acceptance of the client. Some qualities are not accepted in certain markets. Just quickly about retail. I think most of you would know us because of our retail chain. It's very important as well to run the retail to retrain how the population think of the as a resource. It's very important to also have the retail as to extend the life cycle of the pieces. It has a very big and major impact on the environmental footprint by preventing water usage, the purchase of a new piece, etc. So there are many positive impacts of that. But also when it comes to EPR, it provides us valuable data when it comes to what kind of piece is required, if it sells well, where does it sell, for what price it's sold. So it's very important in our textile management stream to have retail as also a source of feedback from what you're producing, from what you're sorting. If we move to the recycling stream, just to mention quickly that most of it is done by highly advanced manual sorting, in fact. So historically, much of the products in our industry, which is over a century old in Europe, has been done by manual sorting alone. Some of the products, for example, the wiping rags for example, for the automotive industry, for cleaning, oil, paint, etc., it can be done manually. You don't need to invest in technology for that. But still, up to these days, any material which is quilted or layered, it's not possible to be recycled, if not pre-processed before. So that makes our work of sort for recycling, preparation for recycling, very hard. So it comes to the point that it's very needed to have advanced sorting technologies to process those materials. Again, not what is quilted or layered, but what is single material. So we have, therefore, since 2024, have implemented a large-scale optical sorting machine with a hyperspectral near-infrared sensor who can detect the exact composition of a garment. If it's cotton, wool, polyester, what is the percentage of it, in all the details. Also through RGB sensors, it can define the color shade. And through AI of image recognition, it can also detect patterns, if it's woven, knitted, non-woven, etc. So that technology is operational now, and I'll give you some short figures about it. So basically, we define between woven and non-woven material, because it is required by the recycling industry, and we run the two programs separately. It is important to do so because our niche in the textile management stream, they require specific types of product. For example, in the wiping rags that I just mentioned, they often would like a woven material, not a knitted material. In general, what we have achieved with the overall project so far, since we have set up the project industrial scale since last year, is that we have therefore have a detailed output of all the recycling material which we can find in the post-consumer clothing or textiles. And from that, we have obtained valuable information, for instance, that 42% of it, that you can see in the gray area, it's of more than 2 materials, which makes it very hard to recycle, actually. So when it's a single material or maximum 2 materials, you have a possibility of recycling it mechanically or chemically. But when it's 3 or more, it gets really difficult. And that is based on over 1.7 million kilograms sorted, or nearly 5 million pieces processed. So it's a very detailed chart of what we get from it. It's also important to say that we're one of the major stakeholders in Europe when it comes to optical sorting. So we're already processing 12 tons per day on that, and that you don't see in Europe in general. So we're quite ahead of the time, so to say. Just quickly, as you may wonder as well, what about the market for those things? So we are seeing that natural fibers are increasing demand quite rapidly, whilst it was not expected to do so, and that's basically pulled by luxury fibers such as cashmere, but also wool, cotton in high purity. But on the other hand, we see that the synthetic fibers are low in demand, even though you likely have read and seen a lot on media about chemical recycling of synthetics, but it's still not easy to process those fabrics. Bridging to the EPR structure, we work a lot with the French PRO, with Refashion, about providing material of what they call material challenges, so that the industry can test. They can try to see if they can work with the post-consumer material. As you can see in this chart, the most desired material so far is polyester. They really try to make chemical recycling of polyester work, but so far it has been very challenging to build it in large scale. But we're always very active with the French PRO, with Refashion, to try to make it possible, as much as they demand in detail and in accuracy. Again, just to ensure that it's very clear, because we often hear that, quilted material or layered is extremely hard to recycle. So we also advise often when we're asked about it, that the client should be conscious about it. If you're purchasing a multi-material or layered material, it's often extremely hard to recycle it afterwards. And there's no magic machine who can process that. Therefore, we have to come up with different solutions of pre-processing, of making products out of it, and that's all done manually. For example, when it comes to feather quilted pillows. Now, when it comes to EPR structure, hopefully now that you're having a better overview of the stream, how it works with the collection, with the sort for reuse, with the sort for recycling, and the optical sorting for material recovery. So basically, in every EPR, or as a concept, as a framework, the brands or the producers, they are responsible for paying the eco fees, as it's called. So they are responsible to pay the cost for collection, sorting, and recycling. That's how the EPR structure is built upon. That is done, therefore, through PROs, or producer responsibility organizations, and that is shaped out differently, depending on the country. When it comes to France, right now there's only one existing PRO, which is Refashion, that they have been for nearly 2 decades operational, and that is done through a collective producer responsibility system, or CPR. So basically, it has co-participation of other stakeholders, especially with the ministry. Or there's another structure, which is through a certification body called Kiwa Textiles, which is a precondition for operator in Netherlands, and the Netherlands works with 3 PROs. And we cooperate quite closely with them as well, but they have a different model than Refashion. Why is it important to have the EPR functioning? So basically in our sector, subventions are very much needed for R&D, so we can work on automating what is possible to automate. Not everything is possible in our industry, and for focusing on material recovery for recycling. There's no proper and defined market about it yet. We're also stumbling upon the REACH regulation from EU, so that part is quite hard to tackle as of now without the legislation in place. And it also allows us, so if we have subsidies from the textiles EPR, to pay for the material a fair price. So that helps the industry to keep going and to develop all the collectors and all the suppliers. A few things that are happening now within EU, which are key. So first, about the EU member states being obliged to transpose a revised Waste Framework Directive into national law. So that was approved on the 26th of September now. It was already published, and it will be implemented in force in 20 days thereafter. That will force the industry to adapt how these resources are moved, how to make sure that the waste hierarchy is followed, and especially so to make sure that there is data collected and that the sector is supported for achieving the EU targets. And by the 31st of December 2029, the EU Commission plans to reevaluate the Waste Framework Directive. And lastly, another important landmark is that from 17th of April 2028, the textiles EPR must be fully operational in each member state. So when it comes to how it's drafted now, there are a few very important aspects of it. First is the EPR governance. So every member state must ensure that every relevant stakeholder is involved in the process. That's a very important step as of now in the regulations. And that includes the producers, the PROs, the waste operators, the reuse operators, recyclers, etc. And what is also already established is that the PROs must establish a separate textile collection, which is also implemented since the 1st of January this year. And apologies, it jumped. And about the cost is also an important factor that those costs of processing, collecting, sorting, whatsoever, should be covered by the textile producers. So that has to be on their responsibility, as they are, therefore, having the products put in the market. Just to say that we are getting ready for it as well to support locally and EU-wide. So we're building more comprehensive projects of also turning those fibers into yarn, of also how to recycle shoes, which are damaged, which are broken. So we are on a mission, as it is our target, to focus on circularity of textiles and retain value, to go one step further, to follow up with the EPR demands and targets within EU. So it's basically that. If you have any questions and comments, if we don't have time now, just feel free to reach out through our company or via LinkedIn, and we'll be always willing to answer any questions you may have. Okay. Thank you.